A very good morning to you all, and welcome to this third day on the doctoral seminar called Peace and European Values as a Potential Model for Integration and Progress in a Global World within the framework of the Sofia Corradi Scholarship in the Charles V Award, European Award. During this third day, we will have two different panels, two main panels. The first one will be chaired by Jesus, by Gorrijalón. He is former former professor of the University of Salamanca. He is also in charge of Alpha Keke research group linked to the University of Salamanca. He's also a member of the jury of the European Charles V Award. And he's also one of our closest collaborators. He was one of the founding fathers as well of this project, and he's also a good friend. So I would like to introduce him as such because we have been together for many years and we have lived many adventures here at this foundation. Great cooperator, very close partner, and he also allows us to communicate ourselves. He's also then member of the jury but also an interpreter. Jesus, an honor and a pleasure to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Miguel Angel. I'm going to speak English for interpreting management reasons. Humberto Eco, who was a member of this academy and who passed away sadly last year, said that the language of Europe is translation, which is very pertinent and very relevant, I think, for the environment where we are right now. Languages have been hanging around all the time, although they haven't been mentioned at all. I want to take the opportunity of being the presenter, the moderator of one panelist today, to say a few words outside the booth regarding languages and related issues. Walter Benjamin said that when a French person says pain, he understands something different to what a German person thinks when this German person says Brot. They figure out different images of what bread is. Ortega y Gasset made a similar comment with the word Wald. When a German thinks of the word Wald, he thinks of a real Wald, whereas us in Spain, when we say the word bosque, we think of something different. It's not exactly the same. It doesn't have the same volume of trees or the same vegetation, etc. This is to say that in certain places, words mean different things. For instance, for the Mapuche people, the word Wald, bosque, forest, is Mawida in Mapudungun, in their language. When the timber companies are going there to fell their trees, what they feel they are doing is not simply cutting the trees for making paper or furniture or whatever. They are robbing them of their spirits, of their ancestors, of their way of life. So the meaning of the word Mawida is not exactly the same as that of Wald or Bosque or whatever for other civilizations. That applies also to other concepts that have been aired here throughout these 2 past days. What is the meaning of the word youth? What it changes with the space. What is youth for an Indian child who's playing the role of an adult, working in sweatshops at the age of 5? What is the meaning of the word youth for them? Or it changes with time. For instance, my father started working at the age of 12. My grandfather at the age of 5. What kind of youth did they have? They were adults when they were 14 already. There was no youth whatsoever. What kind of youth had the, for instance, some of the interpreters who participated in the Nuremberg trial? They were 21 or 22, 23, some of them. They had forced mobility, quite different from the Erasmus mobility. They were sometimes victims of mobility to concentration camps themselves. They had gone through social cataclysms or diasporas, forced diasporas. So they may have been young for our standards these days, 21, 22, but they were already fully mature people who had gone through a life experience, as you were mentioning the first day, which made them mature and evolve to a higher age than that of the calendar. This is also a concept that will be probably touched upon by Luigi with what we saw in Tunisia with the Arab Spring. Spring is a northern concept for us, because for us, spring now is spring, well, now it is summer, but in the other hemisphere, it is winter. But we normally go by the idea that what we are living is what is right. Whether in the other, whereas in the other hemisphere, they have different seasons. Seasons themselves are a life experience that is an evolutionary phenomenon. So when you hear the word spring, you better start fearing about the arrival of winter, which is what has probably happened with some of the Arab Spring experiences. So these are brief comments regarding languages, which I consider that were relevant, to add something, particularly quoting one of our members of the Academy, Umberto Eco, whom we had the pleasure of meeting, Miguel and myself, with the former director of the Academy Foundation in Milan at his place, at his house, several years ago. By the way, we used French as our communication language at his place. And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Luigi Cino, who's a PhD candidate in political science, European politics, and international relations. His main research interest is the European Union's external action in promoting democracy and enhancing state and societal resilience in the southern neighborhood. South, again, is an obviously relative concept. For them, it is no south whatsoever. South for a Tunisian is further south, is sub-Saharan Africa or whatever. Luigi holds a bachelor's degree in political science from the faculty Cesare Alfieri of the University of Florence, and a master's degree cum laude in international relations from Luis Guido Carli University of Rome. He has had two mobilities in Barcelona and Morocco, in Rabat, in Morocco, and he later obtained a Master of Arts in European Interdisciplinary Studies at the Natolin College of Europe in Poland. And he holds several posts, chairs, etc., and peer reviews, but I'm not going to load or to steal any more time from his allotted time. So you have the floor, Luigi. Welcome to the rostrum.
There was my paper here that disappeared. Very much. And thank you very much to the foundation for this outstanding opportunity. And thank you very much to all the staff that made a great organization of this 3 days doctoral workshop. So if we may go to the slides. what I'm going to present you today is a preliminary research on the Tunisia's political transformation and the role of the European Union in promoting this transformation after the revolution. So the presentation is divided in 3 parts. After the introduction, I will contextualize the revolution and the environment in which the European Union acted. Then I will see the European Union strategy towards the Mediterranean and Tunisia, and then in specific, the policies that the European Union adopted to promote democracy, human rights, and the rule of law in Tunisia. So, what is the rationale of this research? We are 6 years after the Arab Springs, and the Mediterranean is still one of the most unstable places. The geopolitics in the Mediterranean are changing quite often, and the many countries who have been invested by the Arab Springs are still in civil wars. We take the example, we see Syria, but we also see Libya, which are very unstable countries, and they represent a security threat for the European Union. A specific case, indeed, is the one of Tunisia, and that's why I chose Tunisia. Indeed, the National Quartet for Dialogue of Tunisia was awarded in 2015 of the Nobel Prize for Peace, thanks to their commitment to promote social dialogue in Tunisia and the democratic transition. So the political transformation of Tunisia is a matter of fact. Of course, the civil society has represented the main actor in this political transformation. But my question is, has the European Union had a role in promoting democracy and human rights in Tunisia? And if it has a role, in which is this role of the European Union in promoting these values? So I consider the period from 2011 to 2016, and I base my analysis mainly on the EU documents, but also interviews with EU officials and on the literature on the topic. As I was saying, the presentation and the paper is structured in 3 parts. The first part introduced the causes and the history and developments of the Tunisian Revolution. The second part looks at the EU strategy in promoting human rights, democracy and rule of law. And then the third part examines in concretely the policies that have been implemented in order to assess the role of the EU in the conclusions. So I start with the timeline of the revolution. Tunisia was independent in 1956 from France, then became a republic and had its first constitution in 1959. But already in 1975, the President Bourguiba named himself as president for life. However, in 1987, Ben Ali did a medical coup using a document that stated that Bourguiba was not able anymore to rule the country, and then he became the new dictator, which brought just some cosmetic changes to the dictatorship and oppressed many human rights activists and the opposition in general. Protests have been held in Tunisia also before the Arab Springs, in particular in 1983, 1984, in 1998, 2005, and 2008, with hunger strikes made by leftists and Islamists, and also in 2008 with the miners' strike. But it was on the 17th of December of 2010 in the city of Sidi Bouzid that the young Mohamed Bouazizi burned himself as an act of protest against the humiliation he received by the local police with the reason of not having a permit to sell vegetables. This act was followed by many mass young protests, and after just only after 10 days of protest all around the country, the president responded to the people, saying that he would have created 300,000 new jobs, but the local population did not believe to Ben Ali, and then with the support of the trade unions, in particular the Union Générale du Travail Tunisien, and its numerous offices in the country, a general strike was called on January 2011. And after these strikes, Ben Ali announces his resignation and flees to Saudi Arabia. So here starts the Arab Springs in general that then are widespread around the Arab world, in North Africa and the Middle East, and starts also the Tunisian transition to democracy. 2 months after the ruling party of Ben Ali is dissolved by Tunisian courts, and in October 2011 the first free election for a national constituent assembly are held in the country. Also, we have some problems for Tunisia in 2013 when some human rights activists are killed, and then there is a risk of a strong political crisis. But then Tunisian civil society is able to recover, and in October 2014 we have new parliament elections and also presidential elections. So the political transformation of Tunisia is, as I was saying, is actually a matter of fact. I just put here some data from empirical studies of some think tanks. This is the Bertelsmann Stiftung Transformation Index, which underlines the political transformation of developing countries concerning democracy, market economy, and human rights. And here you have Freedom House ratings of Tunisia. From these data, you can see how the international observers have underlined this change that happened in these 6 years. We see how from 2011 the political let me say, sorry, that in this scale from 1 to 7, 1 is considered to be the best point and 7 the worst point. We see how political rights in Tunisia have improved in these years, and also civil liberties, even though in a slighter way. But from 2011, when Tunisia was considered not to be a free country, then it moved to be a partially free country, and is nowadays a free country since 2015. So I want also to look at the causes of the revolution, because this is important to understand the context in which the European Union acted. There are several causes that brought to the revolts. First of all, it's a lack of economic diversification and job creation. But also among the socio-economic causes, we have the deepening of the social inequalities, the regional disparities among the regions of Tunisia, because most part of the Tunisian population is located on the coast, and that is the most developed region of Tunisia, while the other part of the population located in the west and in the south regions, which borders with Algeria and Libya, are the most the poorest region, and these regional disparities are an important factor in the justification of the revolts. Of course, also the deteriorating education system and the public services, together with high rates of corruption, have been among the reasons for the Tunisian to protest against the dictatorship of Ben Ali. And this feeling of insecurity and the uncontrolled urbanization, moreover, the high population growth and the high youth and unemployment have been among the causes of the revolution. But if we go further in the analysis of the economic roots of this revolution, we see that in the 80s and the 90s, many Arab states have implemented, with the support of the International Monetary Fund, some neoliberal reforms. However, these states, after the independence, have centered the economy. There was a state-led economy in this state, and the state had a distributive aim among the population. So these neoliberal reforms cut this implicit social contract between the state and the people, where the state was giving job to everyone and the people on their side were giving up to a meaningful political participation. But once this role of the state is lacking and the people are not anymore employed, the unemployment is high, then youth people asked for more meaningful political participation. Moreover, Tunisia has a problem that it cannot rely on natural resources. So the revenues of Tunisia are quite few, and this was a problem because the loans that Tunisia had from the International Monetary Fund had just the opposite effect, because they increased the national debt of Tunisia. So I already talked about the regional disparities, and I have to mention the labor market. That is another problem, because the labor market is not able to give to the educated people a job according to their skills. And the unemployment rate among young people was of around 30% on a general overall unemployment rate of 9%. In particular, students from humanities had many problems in the labor market, because usually they were hired by public institutions that were now not hiring anymore and reducing their state apparatus. So these are the main causes and of the revolution in which the European and the context in which the European Union is acting. So what has been the strategy first of the European Union? We have first to say what is democracy promotion, as it may have many meanings. Democracy promotion is, in the words of the European Commission, a general concept that encompasses all measures to facilitate democratic development. And thus, in the concept of democracy promotion, we subsume all strategies and instruments which are intended to contribute to a democratization or democratic consolidation of a third country. The interest for democracy promotion and human rights promotion is already present, as we already said in these days, in the Convention of Lomé, which was signed by the European communities and the ACP countries, former colonies from Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific. But it's in the process of Barcelona in 1995, we start to see a first interest for democracy and human rights promotion. The Barcelona process was a process that tried to put closer countries from the northern and the southern part of the Mediterranean. And it was based on three baskets, which are the political and security partnership, the economic and financial partnership, and the social, cultural, and human partnership. On the Barcelona process, the partner countries of the European communities and the southern Mediterranean undertake a declaration of principle to develop the rule of law and democracy in their political system, to respect human rights and basic freedoms, and also the diversity and pluralism in their society. However, this is still a top-down approach because we see these commitments present in the documents agreed among many diplomats, but after some years, the European Union starts realizing the need to foster the role of civil society. And it is in 2002 that the former president of the European Commission, Romano Prodi, in a speech he made at the Université de Louvain-la-Neuve, said, and I quote, "One of the causes of the backwardness in the region and the slowness of the reform process is the weakness of civil society in the Mediterranean countries. A democratic and socially sustainable reform process must also encourage a civil society to make a positive and spontaneous contribution." And this is a first shift in the strategy of the European Union. And there is a first attention to civil society organization in southern Mediterranean countries. In 2004, with the enlargement to the Central and Eastern European countries, the European Union has the need to develop a new strategy towards the neighborhood, the new neighborhood that it's going to have, not only at the southern border, but also to the eastern borders. From this need, in 2004, the European Neighbor Policy is created, and that represent a framework in which the relation between the European Union and the partner countries from southern and eastern neighborhood have. The European Neighbor Policy puts the European values at the basis of the cooperation, at least on paper. We already see a commitment in democracy and human rights promotion that is confirmed, and this is in a framework of conditionality. We have here a negative conditionality because the European Union agrees with partner countries to give some fundings, but the renovation of this funding is upon a conditionality clauses to respect human rights and democracy, human rights promotion and also democracy promotion. And it's based to put it simply, on an idea that if the partner country is not respecting human rights and democracy standards, the European Union is punishing these partner countries by cutting its financial aid. This is made through the creation of the European Neighborhood and Partnership Instrument that seeks to promote media pluralism and role of the civil society. But what is the core of this policy is that the European Union is offering to its neighbors a privileged relationship. This relationship has to be based upon a mutual commitment to values and principles such as democracy and human rights, rule of law, and good governance. These commitments are again repeated and reaffirmed in the Paris Summit for the Mediterranean in July 2008, but they become very important after the Arab Springs. The EU strategy changes after the Arab Springs. We have to say that Arab Springs come in a particular moment because the European Commission, in particular the then High Representative Catherine Ashton and the Commissioner for the ENP, Mr. Füle, they were conducting the review of the European neighbor policy. So they issued two communications which changed the approach of the European neighbor policy in 2011. The first one is entitled A Partnership for Democracy and Shared Prosperity with the Southern Mediterranean, while the second one is A New Response to a Changing Neighborhood. The first one states that the Partnership for Democracy and Shared Prosperity should be built on the following three elements, that are the democratic transformation and the institution building, with a particular focus on fundamental freedoms, constitutional reforms, the reform of the judiciary, and the fight against corruption. The second one is a stronger partnership with the people, with emphasis on the support to civil society and also on opportunity of exchange and people-to-people contacts with particular focus on the young. While the third one is the sustainable and inclusive growth and economic development. So this communication also underlines the need to support the democratic transitions of the Southern Mediterranean countries, in particular by expanding the support to the civil society. And it established also a civil society neighborhood facility that is an instrument to support civil society organization in these countries. In this communication, also the European Union declares to be ready to support with technical instruments and programs the reforms of the countries, in particular strengthening the government institutions, and not only at a local and national level, but even at the regional level. Again, we see the interest to include civil society organization and people in the political dialogues in the countries and to participate effectively in the policy dialogues. The second communication, A New Response to a Changing Neighborhood, is a wider communication because it wants to be addressed also to the Eastern neighborhood. This communication includes the interest to guarantee free and fair elections in the neighboring countries, the freedom of association, the rule of law, and the fight against corruption. So what is interesting from these two communications is that there is both of them care about the economic development and an inclusive growth of these countries. And this is a fundamental point in the action of the European Union, because an economic development is fundamental during the transition period to democracy, and also the consolidation of the democratic institutions. Indeed, if we remember, the economic the economy conditions were the main cause of the Tunisian revolution. So I pass now to the third part on the policies that the European Union implemented towards Tunisia. The strategy and policy implemented by the European Union towards Tunisia are set down in the EU-Tunisia Action Plan, which provides the general framework for the EU-Tunisia partnership. Among the priority actions of this plan, we see the enhancement of the political dialogue and cooperation in areas such as democracy and human rights, foreign and security policy, and the cooperation in the fight against terrorism. In particular, some short-term and medium-term objectives are present in this plan. The short-term objectives to face the political transition concerns the increase of the political participation of the Tunisian society, the development of the role of the civil society, and also the exchanges of experiences between Tunisia and European members of the parliament. In the medium term, the objectives concern the administrative reform to promote more transparency, to fight against corruption, and to strengthen also the independence of the judiciary power. In this action plan that covers the period from 2013 to 2017, the priorities then focus on rule of law and democracy, with particular attention to the electoral system and the independence of the authority that is in charge of the election of the organization of the elections. However, these are not new things. These interests were the same. The same objectives were already present in the strategy papers of the period 2007 to 2015. This means during Ben Ali's dictatorship. Of course, they did not bring to many developments during the dictatorship, as it did after the flee of Ben Ali. Moreover, the European Union has issued a strategic framework and an action plan on human rights and democracy. In particular, the Council of the European Union has issued these documents. And again, the promotion of democracy and human rights is linked to the economic development and the inclusive growth. So, among the policies implemented by the European Union, we find several economic programs. The first one is the Spring Program, which acronym stands for Support for Partnership, Reforms and Inclusive Growth. This multi-sector aid program provided 350 million euros to link the reform for democratic transformation and institution building with a sustainable and inclusive growth and economic development. These are the millions of euros that the European Union committed and disbursed with Tunisia, with the aim to reduce poverty and social and economic disparities, reduce the level of unemployment, and also improve the development of skills and addressing the situation of the young people not in education or in training, also on the basis of activity modeled on the youth guarantee, as we have in Europe. Other programs like the MPARD program, that is a program for agricultural and rural development, are addressed to Tunisia. So we see a massive financial support from the European Union to Tunisia after the revolution. This support is fundamental because the instability of the countries has more or less destroyed the tourism sector, which was one of the main revenues for the Tunisian economy. Then I interviewed in particular an EU official to know what was his opinion on the financial support of the European Union to Tunisia. Of course, his opinion was quite positive, and he said that it has been fundamental, this financial support for the stabilization of the democratic transition process and of the new Tunisian institutions. In particular, probably, this is a counterfactual statement, such democratic transition would not have been possible without this financial support, but also the political support that the European Union, through the European External Action Service, have granted to the Tunisian authorities. And this is important because if we compare it to other cases in the Mediterranean area, we see how it's quite different from the Libyan perspective, where we don't have a strong political partnership with some institutions. So the European Commission also financed the European Endowment for Democracy, that is a separate entity which seeks to promote the democracy and civil society organization in the country. This financial support have been fundamental also for the stabilization of macroeconomic factors, because as I was saying at the beginning, the Tunisian government had a high international debt, and of course no one wants to give money to an unstable country because they won't get back their loans. So the macroeconomic stabilization was also a result of the financial aid of the European Union to Tunisia. So, among the policies, there are not only economic policies, even though the share of money that the European Union addressed to Tunisia is very high. We talk about 140 millions in 2012, for example, and it is even higher of what it was programmed. So the European Union was quite fast in reacting to the Arab Springs and changing what was the then strategy to address as soon as possible the crisis. We have to remember that Tunisia is a fundamental partner for, actually, European Union is a fundamental partner for Tunisia because it's the main trade partner for Tunisia, and also the main partner for cooperation and cooperation development. The Other policies implemented by the European Union, again, are the support to civil society organization and also the technical assistance for the organization of the elections. So we see how from the strategy to support civil society organization, the European Union has also acted in concrete to support this organization. Why? Because civil society organizations are fundamental in the democratic transition. In particular, in the case of Tunisia, the civil society was in the forefront of the revolution. And it has been even more important to maintain the social cohesion of Tunisia after the assassination and the political crisis of 2013 of two opposition politicians. Many actors try to use this assassination to put again Tunisia in trouble and to foster instability. But the various civil society organizations, the trade unions, the bar association were able to foster the national dialogue and to maintain the democratic transition process. Also, civil society represent an important counterpower in the state. It is necessary to guarantee a democratic transition. Otherwise, we face examples like Egypt, where civil society was not strong and the military power break the democratic transition, because after the Egyptian revolution we have the election of Morsi, and then the military start again with the Al-Sisi, a new military dictatorship. So the civil society represent an important actor inside the state to guarantee democratic transition. So we see the European Union support this democratic dialectic through the European Endowment for Democracy, also the Civil Society Facility, which was designed to support emerging pro-democratic movements and actors, and also young leaders, and to promote and monitor reform, and mostly to use the civil society as an advocacy actor to increase the public accountability of the newly created institutions. So, and nowadays, the European Union delegation in Tunis is responsible for 68 projects that worth a total of almost 60 million euros, and they fund various civil society organizations, but also, as I was saying, projects for the economic development and the inclusive growth. The other point is the support that the European Union gave to the organization of the elections, and the European Union gave electoral a technical assistance, and also deployed an election observation mission. The result of this election observation mission was positive concerning the first elections in October 2011, which have been considered to be the first free and democratic elections of Tunisia. On the other side, the European Union itself has not been relevant in the adoption and drafting of the Tunisian constitution that was adopted in 2014. Here, however, we see another European actor that has strongly supported Tunisia, that is the Venice Commission of the Council of Europe, which provided legal assistance to the National Constituent Assembly of Tunisia. So we have seen the bright side of this transition, And in 5 minutes, I will go to the conclusions. But what I want to say is that there is still a real risk to go back. The situation for Tunisia is quite difficult. Of course, it's not nowadays a full democracy. There are still many violations of human rights, and in particular, journalists are threatened often, and the media are not so free. But it is still an important example of quite successful promotion of democracy. If we have to take in consideration that the historical memory in the MENA region of democracy promotion is the one of the Iraqi war. I mean, Western countries have invaded Iraq with the excuse of promoting democracy. So the word democracy promotion in the Arab world is not so welcomed. That is why I think the European Union had shown a different kind of power. That is not the military power, but it's more a civilian, a value power, and has represented, has showed how the European values can represent a real model for our partner countries and neighboring countries to face many challenges and the political crisis that in the southern Mediterranean they are facing. So just to sum up my presentation, what I talk about is first an historical reconstruction, and also I've talked about the social and economic causes of the revolts and the start of the Arab Springs in 2011 in Tunisia. We have seen that lack of economic diversification, the high youth unemployment rates, and the corruption have been among the social economic causes of the revolts. How the European Union has acted and what was its strategy. We have seen that the idea of promoting democracy and human rights was not new, was already present in the Lome Convention and in the Barcelona process. But it's with the European neighbor policy that the promotion of democracy and human rights is becomes very fundamental in a framework of conditionality that is first a negative conditionality on the basis of the principle less for less. I punish the partner countries who are not respecting human rights. That changes after the Arab Revolution with a more for more principle approach. That means I gave more money and more political support to those countries who support human rights and democracy standards. We have seen how the European Union has implemented a strong financial and economic support to the Tunisian states, and also how it has supported politically the civil society and the Tunisian institutions, and also the election observation mission of European Union. So what has been, in conclusion, the role of the European Union? The European Union is not the actor that is not the why now the explanation of why Tunisia is today democratic, because the Tunisian civil society has been the main actor in this political transformation process. What the European Union has done, it has been relevant in flanking this political process with its economic, financial, and political support, and in embedding in this support the promotion of the European values such as democracy, human rights, and rule of law. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Luigi, for a great presentation and also for keeping strictly to the time allotted, because you ended up at 000. So great. Just a couple of comments in order to perhaps start the ball moving. You just mentioned the idea of Iraq and of the fact that some of the Arab countries didn't receive that well the point made by Western powers of promoting democracy in their countries and so on and so forth. I happen to have been present in some of the Security Council meetings where the resolutions were approved to invade Iraq, because that is the word you used, and that is the right word to be used. And I remember someone, I won't tell names because I cannot reveal secrets, but that in meetings where I have interpreted, but what transcended from there is that some of the Western powers didn't have any idea of what they were going to see when they arrived in those countries. And particularly, they weren't even aware of works written by the likes of Lawrence of Arabia, Seven Pillars of Wisdom, for instance, which would have explained a lot of many of the traits, of the features of those societies. Going beyond the activities carried out by the European Union in Tunisia, I wonder whether the use of a template, like a one-size-fits-all, done by Western countries in other countries which belonged in the past to their own empires, colonial empires, and that after decolonization received borders that had nothing to do sometimes with their ethnic distribution, with their own cultural traditions, etc., whether the use of that template can be successful in all cases. In some cases, leadership is understood in a very different manner in certain countries. I'm not, in this sense, promoting the idea of warlords controlling power all over the place. But this is a reality in Afghanistan. We're seeing that all the time in places where not only Europe, but also other countries are from the West are active in promoting, supposedly, peace, democracy, and so on. So cultural elements are very important. For instance, and this is with this I conclude, for instance, the idea of slapping slightly the cheek of a child when he's misbehaving, let's say in Spain or in Italy, is seen quite naturally. You would be arrested in Finland if you are seen doing that. You would be arrested in Finland. Of course, we agree that genital mutilation is not, female genital mutilation is not acceptable by any standards. But there are many nuances in some cultural elements that should be taken into account when applying the one and only recipe, in this case political, to other countries. So this is just a reflection or maybe very modest food for thought for the audience. And with this, I think we can open the floor for comments or questions, unless you want to reply already.
Yeah, I may say something. Thank you very much for this food for thought. And you mentioned one size fits all. That was an important concept in the change of the European neighbor policy in 2011, because at the beginning, exactly, the European Union was acting on a regional level by saying that this is what you all have to do. But we have many different cultures and situations, not only in the Mediterranean, but in general also on the Eastern neighborhood, that one size cannot fit all. And the cultural elements are also fundamental. of course, here there is a big discussion about values, because the cultural, it's like in Europe we are united in diversity. So we have to agree at least on some basic universal values that are, in my opinion, the human rights, the respect for human rights, and democracy and rule of law, even though these are more European values. And of course, you're right, because there is a problem, also a linguistic problem when the European Union is going to talk to these partner countries, because democracy is a concept so wide that can be understood in many, many different ways. This one size does not fit all is represented in particular by the case of Tunisia. Indeed, it's a special case. That's why I chose it to study. If we compare it to the case of Algeria, for example, we see how in Algeria the revolution has not changed the political system, not the leadership. Because Algeria is a country that does not depend economically from the European Union. Algeria has many oil fields, and if the European Union says, Algeria, you're not respecting human rights, so we won't buy any more oil from you, Algeria says to someone else. And this is the problem, I think, for the European Union when acting as a global actor, because European Union is the only global actor that acts on the basis of the respect of some values. At least it tries on the paper. Then I agree that in the practice it's quite hard. But if we see what is China doing in Africa, they are exploiting the natural resources of Africa and the workforce. I mean, also as European, we have done in history, so we are maybe the last one to judge them. But their external action is not linked to any value, respect for human rights and democracy. And if on one side this respect for human rights and democracy promotion, these clauses of conditionality that the European Union imposes to its partner countries are enhancing in general the situations, on the other side it's complicated when we are confronted with other actors.
Thank you very much. The floor is all yours. Anna?
Thank you, Luigi, for such a detailed presentation. So since I'm also in political science, this is also kind of my topic. So maybe I should first remember you all about the old Japanese proverb, which says, instead of giving you a fish, I'm going to teach you to fish. So what this means, actually, it means that the European Union is doing both things. It's externalizing democracy and providing the funds to the countries to develop internally democracy. But there are two things that I don't quite understand in your presentation, because you speak both about promoting European values. You speak also about forging stronger economic ties with these countries. And you also speak in a framework of conditionality. And of course, the European neighborhood policy is quite different from the policy that the EU has towards other neighbors in terms of enlargement. So I'm not sure that you can apply the same terminology of the enlargement to the neighborhood policy, because in the enlargement, the goal of the process is to become an EU member state. So this is also facilitated through different kind of steps. With the neighborhood policy, and this brings me to my second point, with the neighborhood policy, it is much more clear that we are talking about a rational choice of the European Union, which means that by promoting democracy, the EU is promoting stability in the neighborhood. So we call it also, few people in Brussels are now working on this topic, we call it stabilitocracy, which means that on the external borders, by promoting peace, democracy, the EU is promoting peace, stability, but also helping the other countries. So I'm not seeing these themes emerging exactly in your presentation, and I think it's not also fair to speak about the goal of the neighborhood policy only as a way of promoting democracy and values without remembering that it's also beneficial to the European Union in terms of stability, forging stronger economic ties, etc., etc. But also I would like your comment on this conditionality. Why do you use it? And I also heard that you're saying one model does not fit all. This is also from Europeanization kind of literature. Yeah. And I would like your comment on this as well. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Anna, for these very on-the-point comments. Yes, you're right that, of course, the enlargement policy and the European neighbor policy are totally different because, as was during the drafting of the European neighbor policy, Romano Prodi said, the aim of the European neighbor policy is to share with the neighboring countries everything but the institutions. So it is clear for European neighborhood policy countries that they will never join the European Union. Even though we see in the eastern neighborhood some cases like Moldova or Ukraine or even Georgia that really would like to join the European Union. But this is not the aim of the European Union, European neighborhood policy. And this is exactly different from the enlargement policy. I guess you refer to the Western Balkans because nowadays the enlargement policy is addressed to that region. But yeah, in general, the transformative power of Europe is much stronger in the case of enlargement. It's true because in general, the countries who want to adhere to the European Union are pushed to comply with the European Union acquis and the European Union standards on different topics and chapters. I agree that the EU is not only promoting these values, but also its interest. But this recalls, in my opinion, a bit the quite not clear concept of principled pragmatism. I mean, the European Union has also to look at its interest, and there is interest to promote stability. And as one of the most famous political science theory is the democratic peace theory. So that claims that democratic countries do not attack each other. And I think this is the rationale of promoting democracy, because a democratic Mediterranean would be more stable. In the years, this has not always been done. The interests have been more on stability. I mean, before the Arab Springs, we have supported the dictatorships of Northern Africa, because in the meanwhile we were also externalizing the control of our borders to them. I mean, the high migration flows that are today coming from Libya, it's because there is no stability in Libya. So I agree that there is this stabilitocracy. How did you? Yeah.
your own view when confronted with the choice of choosing between the external stability and democracy?
The external, sorry?
When confronted with the choice to choose between promoting stability, having stability in the region, and democracy, the EU is going to choose what suits their interests best. You're saying this?
No, no. I'm saying that there is still. Here I took the case of Tunisia. I say that behind this there is of course an interest. No one does this just for the sake of EU values. There is, but the successful thing is in promoting democracy, in promoting stability, also through democratic values and the respect for human rights.
Any more questions? Eric Bussière has the floor.
I think it's not so simple because you have to choose between democracy and stability. It's not or. It's a sort of mixture, very difficult to choose and to define. For instance, if you take Morocco, it's a stable regime. And I don't know what is in mind of the Commissioner, but globally, European states want to keep a stable Morocco and tolerate an authoritarian regime. And if you have some inside pressure in Morocco, the role of European state is to tell to the government of Morocco, you have to take some measure. It's the case now. So it's more complicated than that kind of classification in political science. In Tunisia, you know, certainly, the French government hesitates to put out Ben Ali or to keep it. Mm-hmm. They spend about 2 months. Are we going to support him because he's not the worst? Or are we going to change? That's all. So you have to imagine. You have to look at very concrete situation. I think it's very important. So that's one of the questions. The second one is if you promote economical reform, you are not sure to have immediate results, or you have immediate exigence for population. So it's effectively very difficult because we have economies, very artificial economies, with a lot of job in administration, people doing nothing, and they are represented a very huge charge on states. So when the dictatorship is there, they tolerate because their job is due to the dictator. When you change, effectively, you are completely right. It's difficult, but you cannot have immediate results.
So I start from the second question. Economic reforms needs time to be to have their results. I agree, but what was in particular in the case of Tunisia is that this economic support from the European Union has been fundamental to avoid that Tunisia would have come into a political chaos. Because we have seen in Libya that there was a political chaos after the revolution. So in a certain way, I see this economic support of the European Union as fundamental in sustaining the economic and then the social stability of Tunisia that was fundamental then to sustain the democratic reform process. As for the first question, I agree that we have to look at concrete cases. Morocco is a good example because Morocco is not at all a democratic country. The role of the king and also of the Makhzen, that is the court of the king, is very strong. Here, and I come back to what Anna was saying, the approach of the Union is most an interest-based approach. European Union is, again, also for Morocco, the main trade partner, and there are strong economic and political ties, in particular also with France, that is an important member state of the EU. And Morocco, if I'm not mistaken, even applied for the membership of the European Union in the 70s. So there is, and then that's why we put the Copenhagen criteria as a third criteria, the geographical criteria, to be located in Europe. Yeah, in this case, in Morocco, we see a different approach from the European Union. And not only in the case of the promotion of democracy and human rights, but also, for example, in the case of the conflict in Western Sahara, because in the documents of the European neighborhood policy, the conflict in Western Sahara is almost never mentioned. What has opened recently a diplomatic question between Morocco and the European Union has been a ruling of the European Court of Justice, which annulled a trade agreement between Morocco and the European Union concerning the products coming from Western Sahara. And then the Morocco complained a lot. I don't remember if they called back the ambassador to the EU. And after the tribunal of the Court of Justice changed this ruling recently. I'm not expert in the detail of this ruling, but we see how it has been the judicial power of the EU that has raised this question of human rights respect towards Morocco in the case of Western Sahara, and not the political part of the European Union, nor the European Commission, nor the Council of the European Union. So yes, we have to look at particular cases, and that's the reason why I choose Tunisia, because I wanted to look at least once to something that has been successful.
Any more questions or comments? Bettina?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I just have a question, because you talked about the Barcelona process at the beginning of your presentation, but then I don't think that you mentioned the Union for the Mediterranean, and so I wanted to know whether this is something that you have analyzed, and whether there is something there in this relation between the EU and Tunisia to promote democracy. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't mention the Union for Mediterranean because it has been, let me say, a bit a failed experiment. But the Union for Mediterranean was an idea of Sarkozy, I guess, in 2008. At the beginning, they wanted to include the southern part of the Mediterranean and then the northern countries of the Mediterranean, but not all the European Union countries. Then Germany and the European communities came and say we should include all European Union countries in the Union for Mediterranean, and nowadays we have Poland in the Union for Mediterranean that has little to do with the Mediterranean, but this intergovernmental organization also there are also I think there is also attention to democracy and human rights, but what I see nowadays, you know, for Mediterranean is doing is a lot to create partnership and projects from countries from the north and the south that is quite useful, and also they foster the exchange between young. There is also a university in Fes and one in Slovenia, and also they promote a lot of exchange in higher education. This is an idea that was also in the papers of the European Union to promote the exchange as like in the Erasmus program from the Northern Africa and Middle East to Europe, of course in both directions. However, to answer your question, maybe I could include some consideration on the Union of Mediterranean role in this, but as I see it more défilé than the role of the EU and the Venice Commission of the Council of Europe.
Any more contributions from the audience? That is not. Hey, Anna Milosevic.
Really sure. So, what about okay? The EU is promoting its model in the Mediterranean countries in the Northern Africa. But what about other regional actors? For example, there is the Arab Parliament. What about the United States? Other interested actors? What about them? You know, how this influences the EU success rate, let's say, in the success in the Mediterranean. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, there are many actors interested in the region. Also, Russia, we can mention, for example. I don't see any action like the one of the European Union from this actor in promoting democracy, of course. There is an interest, I take the example of Russia, in supporting some allies in the region. Russia, for example, has very few allies in the Mediterranean. That's why they're strongly supporting Bashar al-Assad. But in this, maybe it's more evident in the eastern neighborhood. We're starting to see, and I heard in the last month an interesting presentation by Professor Demmelhuber, that we see on the other side the promotion of autocracy, that every country, every power tries to promote its model of government, of political system, and we start to see that some autocratic countries, like for example in the Central Asia, Kazakhstan, but also Russia, try to promote political system which are more similar to them. That is why the role of the European Union becomes even more important, because we see a clash of values and not only of interest. Nowadays, as I was saying, I see only the European Union as the one that is caring about these values. China is not at all, and even the United States are more acting on an interest-based foreign policy, especially in the Mediterranean.
Anybody else wishes to add anything? If that is not the case, I think we can wrap up this first session of the morning, and we have gained a few minutes, which will be quite useful for the rest of the day. Thank you very much, Luigi, for your very good contribution, and a round of applause, please.
Thank you very much.